Instead, we have the opportunity to make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
My name's Katy Dawson, and I'm currently teaching third grade and teaching compassionate communication to parents. There was a kid I was worried about in kindergarten. He seemed angry a lot and impulsive and physical. And once when kids were playing with blocks and playing in the playhouse, I saw him and he was tense. And he was watching another kid who was also a strong personality. And suddenly he picked up a block and heaved it at him with a lot of force. Fortunately, it was too much force and it sailed right over his head and landed on some kid who had no problem just saying, "Hey!" And the first kid hadn't had any intention to hit that guy. So he could say with total sincerity and an open heart, he could just say, "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to hit you, I meant to hit him." And then because he was the kind of kid who frequently did things that he knew were outside the norms and had repercussions, he started looking around to see if I had noticed. And I had, and he saw me looking at him, but I was smiling at him because I remembered that just the day before, he'd been rocking the baby doll in the dollhouse. And that had been so encouraging to me because I hadn't seen him have those kind of tender interactions with kids, but that he could rock a baby doll. That was good. So I could smile at him. I was glad that the block missed. I was glad I'd seen him rock the baby doll. And he quickly looked away, but I kept smiling at him because I knew he was going to check again. And he did. A second later, he looks again. And I said, like this. I didn't call his name or anything. I would have gone up and gone to him, except I kind of knew. I was just warmly inviting him to come over, and he did. And he sat down next to me, but you're not going to be able to get this. He sat next to me, but he really didn't want to talk to me. So he slumped down to where he could basically put his head under the chair. So he was sitting next to me, but he was not wanting to interact with me. And I just said, "Oh, so what happened?" And he mumbled, because his head's under the chair, right? I couldn't hear anything. And I said, "Well, I can't hear you, but can I guess?" More mumbling. I said, were you frustrated?" Mumble. So then I thought, okay, what need was not met for him then? Well, he wasn't connecting. He wasn't getting to play with what he wanted to play with, so choice, he didn't have. But I thought, none of this is going to resonate with this 5-year-old in the third week of kindergarten. So I said, were you frustrated and you just couldn't think of what else to do? His head started to come up from under the chair. And he said, "Yeah, I was frustrated." So I said again, "You were frustrated and you couldn't think of what else to do." And he actually looked at me and smiled a little bit and said, "Yeah." And as a parent, I would have launched into the teachable moment, blah, 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 blah. But I had this sweet feeling of connection right then. And so I just said, well, that's great, because we've got a whole year to learn other things to do. This is kindergarten. I can teach you those things this year. And we just sat smiling at each other for a little bit. And I was so relieved, because I wanted connection with him, with every kid that I'm worried about in particular. I want it with all kids in the class, but the kids that I'm worried about, if I can get connected, then anything's possible. It may not be necessarily smooth path, but it's a start. So after a while of just sitting there smiling at each other, I said, "You want to go play?" He was utterly surprised. And he said, "Yeah." And he got up and walked over to the kid he'd been aiming at and said, with just this lightness, "Can I help you build that?" Which, of course, is what we'd want to have be the outcome of a teaching moment. But the teaching wasn't necessary. The open-heartedness and the connection and the acceptance made it possible for him to open-heartedly go talk to the kid he had just heaved a block at. Yeah, so empathy is really powerful. It opens my heart. It opened my heart to him, and it opened his heart to the kid he'd been aiming a block at.
So it sounds like it's very open-hearted quality then.
Yeah.
That empathy is about opening.
Yeah, yeah. And you can see it in a kid's body. They shift. They look up if they haven't been looking up. They're willing to acknowledge the person who's been giving them empathy, or if it's in a dispute, once they feel heard and accepted through empathy, they're actually willing to look at the opponent in the struggle, the conflict.
So a large part of it is just listening to
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. And there's times when feelings are so high, they can't listen. They can't listen to somebody else. And if they can't listen to me, they can't listen to me either. And I like to build community through empathy, because lots of times kids will naturally say, "Oh, somebody fell down," or "somebody got hurt," or something. And that's so kind. And so I like to encourage that by asking them, "So do you want to go help? Let's go help." And we go help not by bringing Band-Aids or usually, but just by saying, "What happened? And how do you feel?" Or usually if the kid's in tears, we don't ask him how they feel. I'll ask other kids, "Well, how do you think he's feeling?" Because lots of times kids and grown-ups have a pretty limited feeling vocabulary when you ask them, "What are some feelings you have?" "Oh, mad, bad, sad, glad." That's it. But if you ask them to look at somebody who's having feelings, they can say, "Wow, she looks pretty frustrated," or "disappointed." And to hear that word come out of a 5-year-old, they know it. They don't think of it as part of their vocabulary, but they know it when they see it in a friend. So
There seems to be something about naming the experience or that has some kind of an importance
Yeah.
to making it more accessible or something.
yeah, and it so helps kids who are unhappy to hear those words from friends, not just from an adult. And the friends get it. It strengthens their connection. It's very powerful and positive.
See the world through other people's eyes. Empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.